First, if you would shut your phones off, we'd appreciate that, or put them on silent so that we're not interrupted. Second, after we do the roll call and approve the minutes, we go through the agenda items one at a time. The way it works is city staff will present an item, and initially then it's open just to the commission for technical questions. After the technical questions, we open it up to the public for comments and questions. If you have anything to say, just step up to the microphone over there and state your name and address so we have it for the minutes. Once everybody who has desired to speak has had that opportunity, we close public comment, bring it back to the commission for discussion and a vote. And with that, let's call the roll.
Kathleen Propp,
Here.
Ed Bowen, Steve Cummings,
Here.
Michael Ford,
Here.
John Hintz, John Kiefer,
Here.
Barbara Weigart, Thomas Perry,
Here.
Andrew Mott,
Here.
Eric Groth, Thomas Voitek.
Here. Moving on to the approval of the minutes from February 5th. Do we have any corrections, deletions, et cetera?
Move approval. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion clearly passes. Let us move on to item number 1, a street right-of-way dedication for County Highway Y.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So item 1 is a pretty straightforward one here. The city of Oshkosh is requesting the dedication of additional street right-of-way to enable potential future expansion of County Highway Y, otherwise known as West Sunnyview Road. You can see the subject site there in blue. So a lot of this, I think this is Winnebago County landfill up here, the Winnebago County Highway Department, and then the sheriff's office and jail there. There's some multifamily in the vicinity, and then to the west is, I think, the town of Oshkosh, so not within the city limits. Basically, what would happen is about 7 feet of additional right-of-way on the south side of County Highway Y would be dedicated. This was actually done as a CSM and recorded at the Register of Deeds earlier this year, and it would be official upon Plan Commission and Common Council approval. What it would allow is for an 80-foot right-of-way, which would allow a 4-lane road that would be consistent with County Highway Y on the east side of Jackson there. And it should allow for sidewalks and terrace area too. Here is the CSM. You can kind of see it. It was also in your packets, and just a kind of a zoomed in view there. So you can see that land from the county parcel on the south of the, on the south of the road there would be dedicated. And with that, staff recommends acceptance of the right-of-way dedication.
All right, technical questions from the commission. Seeing none, anyone here from the audience to speak to this item today? All right, seeing none, back to the commission.
Move approval. Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
I'll just say quickly that that's a great idea. I mean, that's connectivity reasons, being able to put a sidewalk there eventually will be huge. Happy to see.
All right, let's call the roll.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Perry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Propp,
Aye.
Voitek.
Aye.
Motion carried 7-0.
On to item number 2, another street right-of-way dedication, this one at the 300 to 400 block of Washington Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Yeah, this is a dedication on Washington Avenue on both sides of the street. Up on the screen is an aerial photo showing the site. On the north side, we have the YMCA and Clarity Care facility. And on the south side, this is the Howard, which is recently renovated. And we have a couple single-family structures as well on the south side. Washington Avenue kind of has, currently kind of has an unusual right-of-way width. Currently on the subject site, the width of Washington's right-of-way is about 51.5 feet on the west side, and it widens out to about 53 feet on the east side of this section. So what the Department of Public Works is requesting is to widen that to a total of 57 feet to enable public sidewalk to be located entirely within public right-of-way. These are just a couple close-ups of the CSM that's being processed to enable us to dedicate that. On the north side, it's an approximately 382-foot stretch that ranges from about just over 3 feet to 3 feet on the west side to just under 2 feet on east side. And then on the south side, the section, or the subject area is about 476 feet wide, and the dedication ranges from 2.38 feet on the west side and tapers down to just under 2 feet on the east side. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the right-of-way dedication of Washington Avenue as requested.
Just let me add to that comment, go back once, Jeff. As part of this project, we had gone out to several of the property owners in this stretch of Washington, the Y, Clarity Care, the owners of the Howard, and Randy Schmiedel, and what happened was we were able to get them to agree to dedicate some of these additional lands, so we were able to widen out the terrace. So if you go down Washington now, you'll see, well, you can't see it now because there's a bunch of snow in there, but the terraces are extra wide. So I think we got them to about, what, Steve, 6 feet maybe in some areas? They're just wider than they were going to be normally going into it, so we can get some decent plantings in there.
Yeah, essentially, if you remember, prior to the reconstruction, the terraces were next to non-existent, if not entirely paved, along Washington. Additional dedication, at least allowed us, I believe we get roughly at 5 foot, so it can support a tree and some grass and actually be a reasonable terrace for those purposes, as well as snow storage, as this winter is well needed.
Thank you,
So
sir.
really, the property owners really stepped up there and helped us by giving us that additional right of way.
Thank you. Technical questions? Kath?
Yeah, these sidewalks have already been built, right? This is sort of call it a retroactive
It's
action
cleanup.
that we're taking?
Just clean up, yeah.
Okay.
Any other technical questions? Okay, anyone here from the audience to speak to this item today? Seeing none, back to the commission.
Move approval?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Okay, call the roll.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Boytek.
Aye.
Motion carried, 8-0.
Okay, item number 3, grant various easements and dedicate street right-of-way east of Clareville Road, north of the Wisconsin Southern Railroad line, in the Southwest Industrial Park expansion area.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The city is in the process of preparing a certified survey map as part of the Southwest Industrial Park expansion. The proposed map is going to consolidate several lots that the city currently owns and create 4 new lots, kind of being placed in a holding pattern for future lot divisions. The certified survey map will also dedicate some new streets and grant a whole bunch of various easements to both the city or to itself, as well as other public utilities such as WPS, AT&T, that sort of thing. Subject site, let's see. The city started acquiring this land back in the early 2000s, and since then the city's installed lots of utilities, including sanitary sewer, water main, storm sewer, and storm sewer facilities. And then recently, the city completed construction of the transload site, which is just north of the Wisconsin Southern Rail Line. That's located in Wisconsin DOT property. Since city still maintains control of this land, the city's decided that since it's still in control, it's going to grant a whole bunch of various easements to itself, as well as other entities, first to secure continued access rights to city-owned facilities, and then just to provide dedicated locations for other utility providers to place their facilities. So there's 13 easements in total. I'll go through them fairly quickly. On the left side is kind of a zoomed up location, so you can kind of see what's going on. And then on the right side is kind of a overall, so you can kind of tell where we're looking at in the Southwest Industrial Park. So the first easement's just a municipal utility easement. Currently there's some city structures located within here. It's pretty small in size, approximately 12 feet by 105 feet and 576 square feet in size. Next easement's similar. It's another municipal utility easement up along the street a little bit. Again, there are some city utilities within here, so the city wanted to grant itself an easement to continue future access once land changes hands. And again, this is another municipal utility easement. This leads into a stormwater facility located just northwest of the proposed easement area. Again, this is to provide continued access for the city. Next one. This is another municipal utility easement. Currently, I believe there's sanitary sewer which runs along this easement area. Fifth one is a storm drainage easement. Currently, there's a small pipe section, I believe, that comes leading into the proposed street and then runs down into, I believe, a wetland area. Sixth easement's another municipal utility easement with some structures currently in place. The seventh, again, originally this was the proposed street layout, which was going to cross the railroad tracks. The city was unable to acquire access to cross the tracks of their street. However, city utilities had already been constructed within here, so to maintain access rights, the city is going to be granting a municipal utility easement to itself. Okay, next, a different kind of easement. This is a railroad easement that will allow for the crossing of private lands leading to the transload site, and then the tracks crossing heading west into future sites to be developed, wishing railroad access. And number 9, another railroad easement that allow for construction of a spur line within the easement area. Number 10, this is typically seen on new subdivisions or where there's new street layouts. This is a 12-foot wide private utility easement which loops around the entire inside track of the new proposed street network. And then on the other side, easement 11 is another 12-foot wide public utility easement which will laps around the outside of the proposed street network. Number 12 is another public utility easement which will go along parallel to Clairville Road. And lastly, this is the last public utility easement, which runs kind of parallel to the former street layout of Global Parkway and merges into the new proposed street layout. And then there's a 50-foot by 66-foot area here just to provide room for WPS to, I believe, relocate some existing structures. Next. The city is proposing to dedicate a number of streets. The proposed dedication runs along the along the south line of the current city-owned property, and then loops around and heads to the northeast, and then loops around and heading to the southwest and tying into Clairville. So there will be 2 connections into Clairville Road. The overall length of the dedication is about 1.25 miles in length, and the proposed right-of-way dedication is slated at 66 feet wide. Now, with there being 2 crossings of the same street at Clairville Road, the city's proposing to dedicate with 2 different street names. The first name being proposed is Compass Way, which begins at this proposed railroad track crossing, and then Compass Way will head north and then southwest out to Clairville. And then this proposed section will be Transit Drive, which again ties into Clairville and heads east to the proposed crossing. Lastly, the city's proposing to dedicate additional right-of-way along Clairville Road. The right-of-way here, it's been mapped as right-of-way but not officially dedicated. Normally, if the county trunk like this, the proposed right-of-way is 66 feet wide, 33 feet on either side of the center line. The city's proposing to widen that an additional 17 feet to obtain 50 feet of right-of-way east of the center line of Clairville. This will allow for a turn lane for trucks entering and entering the industrial park site. And then eventually, the city plans to dedicate an additional 17 feet to obtain 100 feet total on city-owned lands on the west side of Clairville, but that will come back at a later time. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the granting of various easements and the dedication of street right-of-way for Compass Way, Transit Drive, and Clearville Road as proposed.
All right, thank you, sir. Technical questions? You had made reference to crossing private lands. We're assuming then that landowners are aware of this, or?
Everything that's being touched here today is city-owned land.
Oh, okay. Pardon me. Any other technical questions? All right, seeing none, anyone here from the audience to speak to this item today? Once, twice? Okay, back to the commission.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion on the motion? Okay, call the roll.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Carey,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Owen,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
Now, item number 4 is a public hearing for a conditional use permit for a group development located at the northeast corner of Elk Ridge Drive and Rough Grouse Way, the homes of Hunters Ridge 6, a condominium community.
Thank you.
You bet.
This is a request for group development conditional use permit located at the northeast corner of Elk Ridge Drive and Rough Grouse Way. The proposed development is known as the homes of Hunters Ridge 6, a condominium community. Up on the screen, I have an existing land use map showing the areas or the development, existing land use in the vicinity of the subject site. The subject site is approximately 4.25 acres in size and has a zoning of MR12, which is multiple family residence 12 zoning. Currently, the site is vacant and is being proposed to be the 6th condominium development on a block which is bounded by Elk Ridge Drive, Whitetail Lane, Rough Grouse Way, and then Waukau Avenue on the north. The surrounding area has predominantly multifamily developments. As I mentioned, the 5 previous condominium developments to the north, some additional condominium developments to the north and east. Currently, there's vacant lands to the south. And then I'm going to go to the air photo here. And then on the west side, there's been apartment developments over the past decade or so. The petitioner is proposing construction of 8 2-unit condominium structures totaling 16 dwelling units. The development is consistent with the previous condominium developments in look and style. However, what's unique about this, all of these proposed condo units are 2-unit condos or duplexes, whereas all the other ones to the north are either 4 or 6-unit condos. Up until our recent code change in 2017, development like this would not be allowed by code in any way other than planned development, but our new code allows for, it's called a group development, which allows 3 or more principal structures on a single parcel. So that way they don't have to go through a planned development process to get approval for this type of development. In looking at the densities with the surrounding condominium complexes, it's in par with the developments to the north, averaging about 4 to 5 units per acre. Each of the structures are identical. Each condo unit is just over 1,500 square feet in size, 2-bedroom units with attached 2-car garages. And then 6 of the structures are located along the periphery of Rough Grouse Way, and then the remaining 2 are located centrally on the property. The development will have access to Elk Ridge Drive or Whitetail Lane through shared driveways. I'm going to go back to the photo here. You kind of see an internal driveway network with, that functions internally. They will need cross-access easements across the developments, and that is indicated on the proposed condo plat. And the easement documents will be recorded at the Register of Deeds via separate document. Site criteria such as architectural design standards, landscaping plan, stormwater management, and other utilities will be reviewed during the site plan review process. Those don't go through this body. All we're looking for approval today is the use of the property. Now, uses based on or conditional use permits need to meet 5 criteria for our code. One being is in harmony with the comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan recommends this area is suitable for multifamily, both both medium and heavy residential development, so it is consistent with that. It will not result in a substantial or undue adverse impact on nearby property. It's just a continuation of what's already been developed to the north. Number 3, maintains the desired consistency of land uses, which it is. Number 4, the uses in an area that can be adequately served by existing facilities. Utilities have been put in place along rough groused ways and Whitetail Lane as well as Elk Ridge, so be no undue burden to the city to provide utilities to the site. And then lastly, the potential benefits outweigh potential adverse impacts of the proposed use. So it's more or less just a continuation of the developments to the north. So staff is recommending approval of the conditional use permit as proposed.
Thank you, sir. Technical questions from the commission? All right, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Come on up, sir.
Bob Ryder from Carroll Land Surveying. We drafted the condo plat, and basically it's just what the public is buying, and right now the demand is for duplexes versus the row housing, so that's the reason for the change.
Okay.
Any other questions? I'm here.
Thank you. Come on up, sir.
Good afternoon. Excuse me. My name is John Plickta.
Your address, sir?
I live at 3225F as in Foxtrot, Whitetail Lane. And one of my questions is, number one, I just moved up here in late summer into that unit, and I'm a member of the association there in Hunters Ridge 4. I can still throw a softball and hit this area, by the way, from my driveway. When this whole thing was being put together, were the abutting neighbors informed that this was going to happen or being studied or proposed for a change? Because the original plan that I saw was, in gathering information, was that there was going to be similar type 6-unit buildings, 4-unit buildings and that, and I realize it's changed. And also the start of, I think it was 5, has only 1 building done, and I don't know about the other 2 when they will actually be done. So first of all, is there a protocol that notifies the abutting neighbors to begin with?
Yeah, this is it.
How do the neighbors know about this?
We notify
The owners.
the owners 100 feet
Yeah.
within.
So the owners, not the people that are in the dwellings.
Yeah,
So
the
the
protocols.
owner is supposed to let whomever know. They can share the information. That's what.
How do you notify those people, please?
By mailing.
By mailing? Okay, I don't know why I didn't get one. Oh, okay, but I owned a unit. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, secondly,
Sign put up too.
when they do start the work, are they coming off Elk Ridge into that work site? You know, you bring their equipment in or bring their, to do excavation, whatever it is along the line. Will that be the way that they get into that site to begin with?
That would be a question for the petitioner or the applicant. I mean, they can choose either way.
They both are public streets.
Yeah.
They'd both be accessible.
When you say both, what street? What's the other street?
Well, there's Whitetail Lane or
and Elk
Elk Ridge.
Ridge. They're both public roads.
Okay, but I realize it's an empty field right now, but I don't know how they would come in from the south of that development site or from the west side of it?
There's access points, there's access points down here. You could literally come this way, or you could come this way. This looks like it's
No.
all paved.
It's paved to a certain point, but I don't know as far as traffic goes and fire lanes and all that, if that would get congested, because it's wide open right now.
We respond to that?
Yes, if you could step up to the mic, if you can answer his question, that would be helpful.
At this point, the plan would be to come down Elk Ridge Drive, because it's paved much further than on the
Okay.
other side. So that would
Thank
be
you.
the plan.
Thank you.
And then my last question, if and when they start this, when will they be, is there a time frame? Like 6 months, 2 years, whatever?
No, there's no time frame on
Actual construction.
correct. There's no time frame on
Okay.
construction.
Thank you.
Good. Come on up, sir.
David Slate. I've been a resident at 3175 Whitetail Lane, Unity. I'm currently the president of our three-building association. And our main concern would be the use of the fire lanes, because our access to our driveways are off fire lanes, not off Whitetail or Elk Ridge. The owners of the association are responsible for the maintenance of the blacktop fire lanes. And so we're concerned about limiting how the access to the new development area for the future resident would be accomplished if they would be using our fire lanes, because we're responsible for maintaining those. Now, this year we incurred an expense of about $5,000 to repair the blacktop, which is, I don't know, 15 years old or so. And that's my main concern is the future access for the new residents to that area.
We're gonna have to ask the applicant because the plat shows access that way. We'll have to ask Mr.
It would be
Ryder.
coming down those driveways, either off of Elk Ridge, then there would be a fire lane. That would be our driveways for whatever new association goes in there. And
Come on up, sir.
Go ahead.
So when they're doing the construction, there would be signage to bring them, construction vehicles to come right down into the site, not to go into the other easement areas. That would be the plan. It would be signed that way. The condominium plat does show a common ingress and egress easement between the two different condo units, and that would be worked out as part of the condo declaration. And I don't have that information at this time.
But basically, you're going to avoid,
Right, we're trying, the intention would be to absolutely during construction, avoid any additional traffic. Once the asphalt is all in place, it's very difficult to limit who drives where.
And that's what I've seen in the past is, the last thing is the asphalt, and then they begin building the units. But that was my main concern, is how are our fire lanes that we maintain going to be affected?
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next.
Ed Dufour, 3265B Whitetail Lane. Could I ask you to put the previous slide back up there? And would it be okay if I came up there?
Sure, if you want to point something out,
Yes,
absolutely.
I do. Whether you all know it or not, these two things don't exist right now. I live right here. The only way out of the area to Whitetail Lane is to go back down our driveway here. I'm wondering if when it's done, will this be paved? Right now, this is gravel and it's snowed shut. It's not being plowed. Will this be paved so that we can get out to Elk Ridge that way, so we have more than one way out of the place? Or will this come through here so that we can get out to Whitetail? In other words,
Sure.
they have to finish our driveway, but to come out this way there. A better thing would be, this is gravel right now. Is that going to be paved? I guess that's my
Let
question.
me go back to the next slide here. According to this will be a driveway leading out to Elk Ridge Road, and per code, it does have to be paved. And similarly, this section here will, or potentially lead out to Whitetail Lane, but again, everything will need to be paved per code.
Okay.
At
And
when it's developed, right? Bob, what's the schedule on that?
Well, the developer would like to get started doing things as quickly as possible. Absolutely, it'll all be asphalted, and Jeff's 100%. The site plan will show everything that has to be put in place out there, and they're gonna do everything possible to move it along, get it paved. It will allow for the existing condo that the gentleman talked about to have actually two routes to go, so in case a tree falls over or there's an accident blocking, it does provide for a second way to get to his building,
I guess the question, it's the point from here to here, because this is the driveway that'll lead to service these condos. Do you know the schedule on this particular area?
We'll put a binder coat immediately when we start developing that, will all be in binder.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Okay, seeing on, back to the commission. Ed?
Just a process question, I guess. This is new as far as like this group development, conditional use permit for group development.
January 1st, 2017, yes.
What's that?
January 1st, 2017.
Right. But this is the first one I think we've looked at for this kind of thing, right?
For residential, I believe
Yeah,
so.
for residential. So, does this kind of bless it fully, or does this then come back as part of a more detailed review?
Nope, it's
or
not SIP or GDP.
So it's not, this isn't
Not plan
similar to the
development.
plan development
Correct.
process. This is conditional use permit. This is what we're getting on the site plan. This is what we're getting on driveways and all
Correct.
access points and all that stuff. This is the last we see it.
Yeah, everything, at this point, because it's coming through a conditional use permit,
Yeah.
everything going forward just has to meet base code standards.
Gotcha. Okay, just like I said, we haven't really looked at this for residential stuff, so I was just curious how it all worked.
Other discussion? Kath?
But right now, according to this, there will not be another access onto Whitetail Lane.
Not directly from this development, but let me go back to this one. Does this show it? No. I believe heading north on Whitetail, there is another connection that, whoop, let's see, right,
Look like it.
somewhere there is. Sorry. Mark, can you? We'll get it up on here.
You want Jay to pull it out?
You're on the entrance right now.
That's where it is?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't zoom out far enough to show that second access.
You know where we are, Jeff, I'll let you.
Come on. There we go. Okay,
Right there we go.
right here's where that second
Oh,
connection, actually, there's, well, this one only serves these two buildings, but yeah, potentially they could go up this driveway and head out to Whitetail Lane right here.
and the other one is that, what looks like gravel, yeah, right there.
This here, that would be the
That's the one we're talking
second.
about.
Correct. Mhm.
All right, thank you.
Other discussion points or questions from the commission?
Just have one more thing.
Yeah, Kathy?
I don't get out there very often, and I went out and I'm very impressed with this whole area. I like the way it looks.
Oh, nice job. Other thoughts from the commission? Do we have a motion?
Approval.
Been moved and seconded? Sure. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, let's call a roll.
Cummings?
Aye.
Ford?
Aye.
Kiefer?
Aye.
Harry?
Aye.
Mott?
Aye.
Crop?
Aye.
Bowen?
Aye.
Wojtek?
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
Item number 5 is another public hearing, this one for proposed zoning ordinance amendment to section 156 floodplain overlay zoning district to adopt revised FEMA flood insurance rate maps and regulatory floodplain and flood storage district maps within the Sawyer Creek watershed.
All right, Jeff, I and Steve are gonna tag team this as this thing goes along, so. Basically where we are, we're in a public hearing for adopting the new proposed floodplain maps, the LOMR, for an area of Sawyer Creek. So what we're doing is two things. We're adopting the FIRM which is the revised floodplain, flood insurance rate map. We're going to be proposing to adopt the regulatory map, which mirrors the firm, and then we are also adopting the flood storage districts as part of this process. This is a process that's been going on for a while. We've been working on improving the Sawyer Creek area to get it to flow a little bit better. So we had a meeting. When do we have that meeting on the
February 7th, I believe.
February 7th. So we noticed everybody who was being impacted by this, and I think it was 400 some property owners.
450 over that.
Okay, so
450.
so we noticed everybody was impacting, saying this is going on. We send them out a meeting note, and we had Strand to come up to do the presentation, and this was kind of the background that they provided. So I'm going to show the background of how we kind of got here. So flooding incidents since 1990, 5 presidential disaster declarations. You can see that, and 6 other flooding. That kind of shows the situation which we're trying to rectify, or which we've hoped to have rectified with the actions that we've taken. The purpose of what we're doing here is to reduce health and safety impacts due to street property and flooding. Street flooding impacts access for emergency services. And everybody who lived on the west side can remember when Sawyer was underwater, or Sawyer, 9th Avenue was underwater. Flooding impacts healthcare facilities, as you'll see from some of the pictures. Flooding impacts to homes and businesses. So there you can see Sawyer Creek at 9th Avenue. And then you see Washburn Street. So you see, the impacts of what happens when you don't control development in the floodplain. There you can see the hospital. That would be a tough stretch to get to. You'd have to swim over to get to the hospital. There's Westfield Street at Evergreen Manor. So one of the main goals of what we're trying to achieve here with the new regulation, or expanding, the regulations are the same. We're changing the area, the mapped area of the floodplain. Reduce health and safety impacts due to street and property flooding. There's a train derailment. You see street and yard flooding. Reduce health and safety impacts. Here's kind of the background. This is the Sawyer Creek watershed. So you can see the watershed. It's a real big watershed, 15.7 square miles, about 10,000 square acres. You can see the municipalities on the left that are impacted by it. About 31% is in the city of Oshkosh. Then it goes into the various towns. The background, how we got here to the new maps. Bridges, all but one of the 18 bridges were updated in the model. The detention basins, we have 29 detention basins totaling 640 acre-feet of storage were added in the model. That includes James Road, things like that. Dredging, there's been a lot of dredging that has occurred along Sawyer Creek. Over 40,000 cubic yards of sediment was removed from the downstream. And then preservation of existing flood storage, over 293 acre-feet of storage being preserved through the flood storage districts. And that is probably the biggest change of what we're doing today. As you can recall, maybe a month ago or so, we adopted the new flood storage districts. And what the flood storage districts do are they're preserving that volume. So it's like a detention basin upstream and kind of out of the floodplain, or at the edge of the floodplain, that's currently holding water right now. What we're proposing to do as part of these actions, is actually officially map them as flood storage. We will also want that to concurrently happen at the county level. For this to happen, and it also has to happen at the county level, because that's where a lot of the flood storage districts are. But a lot of our model, the flood insurance, the flood study, is based on these flood storage districts. I'm going off the presentation. So here's the map of the regulatory map. So this is the map that we look at when we're regulating development in the floodplain. The red now are the flood storage districts. So you can see there are a number of flood storage districts. The blue is city boundaries. So you can see the red flood storage districts outside the city. Those are the ones that we're requesting the county to map. And then you can see the ones inside. inside the city. Jeff, which map is this? Is this the updated one, or is
This is proposed 100-year floodplain and proposed floodway and
Oh, yeah, that's right, flood storage district. So that,
and storage districts.
yep, so these are, this is the proposed map. And at this level, it's hard to really see, the impacts of what's happened, because what's happened is the vast majority of people have benefited from these actions that we're proposing. The vast majority of people have seen some kind of change to the floodplain elevation. Most of it has gone down. There's a couple areas that were added. They're added because we have better data now. We're able to look at and based on elevation, they're actually in. But the vast majority of people have benefited from these particular actions. I think, Tom, you looked at it and it's impacted your property.
Clearly.
Yeah, based on the new mapping, 60 properties are now completely removed from any impact by the 100-year floodplain or the floodplain. But, conversely, 23 properties now slightly touch the 100-year, and as Darren mentioned, that's mainly due to better, we have more refined data collection and versus what was originally used on the current firms.
Yeah, by elevation, they're already in the flood zone. So we're just now we have better data. Jeff, what do you feel?
Yeah, this is just a zoomed-in area of the city's floodplain and floodway areas and the flood storage districts. All of the flood storage districts within the city are existing detention ponds. There's really no change to the surrounding properties around those areas. And this next map, this is from the floodplain study that was prepared by Strand. It's kind of difficult to read, but the areas in the purple hatching and the purple dots, that's the current firm extents for floodway and floodplain. You can really tell in areas where it's been reduced versus the new mapping, which is the lighter blue and the darker blue. The lighter blue being the floodway and the darker blue being the floodway. But areas, you receive predominantly purple. Those are all areas that have been removed from either the floodplain or the floodway. Areas that were added, one that comes to mind is Locust. More or less, the floodplain goes down the street and just nicks the adjoining properties along the inside edge of the sidewalk. So does that mean they have to pay flood insurance? Not necessarily, but it's just showing that what more refined data can do to a map. And
these would be the updated firm maps. So this is the flood insurance rate map. The reason why we can get flood insurance in the city of Oshkosh and in the outlying areas are because of these maps. So FEMA looks at it based on our flood insurance study, and they adopt these maps. Now, the important part of what we're doing here is, yeah, FEMA can adopt these maps all day, but they're not regulatory. So we have to adopt our regulatory maps on top of this, so we can control development occurring in the floodplain. So that's kind of what we're doing. We look at what FEMA's proposing, and FEMA has proposed this LOMAR, letter of map revision, to this area of these panels. I think it's affecting 3 panels. So that's the process that we're going through right now. We're readopting the firm based on that study for these areas. On top of that, we're just putting our regulatory zoning over these areas, over the 100-year floodplain and the 100-year floodplain and floodway. Jeff?
And next, these are the other 2 firm panels that are being amended. This is more outside the city's jurisdiction or within the county. This is the far western extent of the mapping. And then lastly, this is the last firm that's being amended. Just kind of grabbing a small portion of city land, but it's mostly within the town. So with that.
So we'll entertain
Do you want technical questions?
and then we open it up to
Public
public hearing.
First, technical questions. We've done this before.
We've had a workshop. We've been talking about this for years. Finally here.
All right, no technical questions. Anybody here from the public to speak to this item today, please step up to the mic and state your name and address and what you think.
Come on, I didn't do that good of a job. Any questions? All right.
You did, nice job. Is that what you're looking for?
Well, yeah, every once in a while.
Okay, public comment is therefore closed and brought back to the commission.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Discussion on the motion? All right. Call the roll.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Crop, Bowen,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Abstain?
Oh, motion carried.
Just as a point before we move on, this is a two-part process. The county still, in order for this to happen, the county still has to map those flood storage districts. So everybody knows that we're not done yet. Working on it.
All right, on to item number 6, the general development plan approval for a multifamily development located at 3054 West 20th Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Happy to help.
So if the Plan Commission can remember, probably 9 months to a year ago, we had a workshop on a potential development for this property. Potential developer was looking at constructing some multifamily structures here. Very early in the process, we brought him into the Plan Commission, had a workshop to kind of talk through what he was thinking about doing. After that, staff made some visits to this type of development of maybe fully understanding exactly what they were proposing. So fast forward to today, and the applicant is ready to finally move forward with the initial step. So they're asking for only a general development plan at this time. Basically, the initial step of this process is coming to the Plan Commission and Council and determining, should we change from the original single-family development that was proposed at this site to multifamily development. Now, the property is zoned MR12 plan development, so it is already zoned appropriately for multifamily use. However, in 2008, there was a previous plan development for single-family condominium units on this property. So here's an aerial of the site. Like I said, in 2008, there was a previous plan approval that included, wrong one, 2 community-based residential facilities, and then 26 single-family condominium units over the remainder of the portion, along with some stormwater management facilities that were constructed. So 2008, following the 2008 approval, the 2 CBRFs were constructed, stormwater management facilities constructed, a driveway was constructed into the site to potentially serve that single-family condominium development. In conjunction with that, there was a proposed 15-foot wide pedestrian trail that ran along the Sawyer Creek portion of the property to tie this development into the adjoining areas. So the first step in this process is to amend the previously approved general development plan with a new general development plan to establish is multifamily an appropriate use for this site. So the applicant is proposing 3 42-unit apartment buildings and proposed kind of office outbuilding establishment. These buildings are proposed right now at the maximum 45 feet in height that is allowed within the zoning district. That is in large part due the applicant is proposing 42 garage parking spaces in the first floor of the unit. So they're essentially 4-story buildings, but it is a single floor of parking, 3 stories of single-family residential above that. Now the MR12 zoning district has a maximum allowed building size of 12 units. So the applicant would need a base area modification to go from basically 12-unit buildings to 42-unit buildings. So staff took a look at what the impact is on the site. So the MR12 zoning requires 3,600 square feet of lot area per dwelling unit. So based on the little over 14-acre site, that would accommodate essentially 173 units, or 12.1 units per acre, within the base zoning. The applicant is proposing 126 units, or 8.8 units per acre, so substantially less than maximum build-out of this site would allow. So in looking at that, staff is comfortable with the base standard modification to go from 12-unit buildings to 42-unit buildings. Basically with the understanding, we know when you get into this type of apartment development, when you're trying to have those higher-end apartments that include parking, you need to have kind of larger buildings to accommodate parking within the building. It's not really feasible to have 12-unit buildings with 12-unit parking stalls within them. Just to make the numbers work, they generally have to be larger buildings. By doing so, they also open up the site for a lot more green space because they are reducing the surface parking demands that will be on the site. They will need to increase over this very conceptual site plan the parking that's shown. Right now, the applicant is stating their intent would be basically have half the parking be in the buildings, half the parking would be surface parking. Our code requires 2 parking spaces per unit for 1 and 2 bedroom units. The applicant is proposing basically 21 one-bedroom, 21 two-bedroom units per building. So this site plan will have to increase the amount of surface parking, but again, we're only at about half of what you would traditionally see with this type of development because they are putting some within the building. Vehicular access to the site would continue using the existing access drive. So this access drive is currently on the parcel of the proposed development. The 2 community-based residential facilities to the west use kind of that shared access drive to access their parcels. There is still a 15-foot wide pedestrian path shown around the exterior of the site. That is something staff is definitely concerned with. We do want to make sure that pedestrian trail system is constructed as part of any development that would take place on this parcel. So during the specific implementation plan, if this would be approved, we would look to work out the exact details of how that pedestrian path would look, what would it be constructed of. They have not provided any new stormwater management plans as part of this review. We will have to see some revised stormwater management plans if this plan goes forward to the SIP level, but they do have a dry and a wet detention facility that have already been constructed. We'll have to find out if those are still sufficient or if they would have to be modified in any way, but that would be done as part of the specific implementation plan. No landscaping plans have been submitted at this time. Again, the applicant is really focusing on is the appropriate land use change first. If it is, then they'll get into those finalized plans that you would see as an SIP. Concept building elevations have been provided. This applicant has dealt with this unit type in other places. We went out and looked at some units in La Crosse that are the same style as these. So they're kind of showing the concept plans. They said they do have kind of the at-grade parking entrance to the units. And it is 3 stories of apartment buildings on top of that. And then you can kind of see in this drawing, there is kind of also a central entrance into these units where the elevator is mailroom, kind of some of that stuff is located kind of in a lobby-esque function when you first come into the building. Generally, the concept shows precast concrete panels with the stone and brick accents. Upper floors are horizontal lap siding. Windows are traditional sash style. All the apartments do include decks with balconies. They're all covered. Final SIP, we would get into the exact building materials breakdown as we traditionally do. With that being said, staff is in favor of the proposed general development plan, based on a modification to exceed the 12 units to a maximum of 42 units.
Thank you, sir. Technical question.
What is the small building just north of the wet detention area?
So, in the previous developments, the applicant has used that as like their leasing office. One of their developments, it was a small gym. I'm not sure what their exact proposed use is for that building, but they did want to indicate that in all likelihood there would be that kind of outbuilding as well.
Kathy, this here? No. Other technical questions? Ed?
I know we're not here yet, obviously, because it's not SIP, this is just general development plan, but thinking forward to that as it relates to this, what are the exterior material requirements for this? Would we be class, I mean,
There's a pretty, our multifamily development standards are, I don't want to say minor, I can grab the book and tell you.
My
We
thought process.
we don't have the same standards as commercial if you're.
Yeah. Right. No, I know that.
The standards are less than commercial or like the Riverfront Overlay District. Those do have some higher standards.
Right. My thought being that as the trade-off for some decreased density here, we're allowing the height to be significantly above what we probably would normally see in this area.
The height would meet code.
Oh, it would meet code.
Yep, 45 feet is the maximum height allowed by code.
In MR12.
In MR12. Yep, so they're not requesting a base standard for overall height.
So our issue here is really one of building density versus overall site
So
density.
there's really two
I'm trying to
Yeah,
think back to the workshop.
There's two
on
parts
that.
of this discussion. The
Yeah.
first is multifamily appropriate when this was originally proposed as single-family houses?
Mm-hmm.
And then, is it appropriate to allow if we do think multifamily is appropriate, is larger buildings as a 42 units at, say, 3 at 42, instead of, a dozen 12-unit buildings? A viable option.
Is it my imagination, or is this a rather unique design to Oshkosh? In terms of the garage locations and the
Yeah, well,
unique in a good way?
Generally on the periphery, on the west side, you'll see some with attached garages directly. With underground parking, that is generally something you see more in the center city. I can't think of any other examples on the west side. Ed, can you think of anything out there? I can't.
I'd say it's relatively unique.
Other technical questions?
And my just
Kathy.
to share my thought process here is this is going to be a little bit. It's going to be a little bigger than I think what was anticipated on this site. So as a result of that, it's going to be a little bit more visible, and I'm kind of wondering what we're going to see as part of that visibility, as part of the trade-off for, yeah, sure, let's go bigger and bless that density, which I'm inclined to do. I mean, it makes sense. It's logical. I guess I want to make sure we don't back ourselves into a corner by saying, sure, you can build this bigger thing, but we don't really have the ability to make sure that people are going to be happy with how it looks.
You've got more massing and density in one building versus spreading out. I mean, you could put just as many units out here if you spread them out.
Yeah, no, I know.
amongst a bunch of-
I get
Correct,
that. I'm just sort of saying,
Yeah, I
those
understand.
one-story buildings,
Or we walk
you're not
seven
going to be
of
able to see coming over the highway on 20th Avenue.
You're looking at
These are going to be visible from a really
so
long
if our
way.
upping maybe our base development standards.
That's what I'm
Going
kind
for a
of-
larger building. Let's get a little bit.
Well, that's what I'm kind of wondering.
Nicer
Yeah,
of it.
are we allowing a larger building that can be covered in a lower grade of material, and we're going to wind up regretting what it looks like by not thinking through that ahead of time?
So
That's all I'm saying.
our multifamily requires buildings to be predominantly clad in class 1, 2, and 3 materials. Class 4 are prohibited. We require 20% windows and door openings on the exterior building facades. We do have some articulation requirements of no more than 40 feet without articulation for recesses, projections, vertical divisions.
And class 3, we're talking about
Class 3 could be your
EFIS is class
EFIS,
3,
CMU, those
CMU
types of
block is
products.
class 3.
Correct.
I think what we can talk to, the applicant is here. We
And,
can-
and I guess I'm not trying to make a point specifically regarding the materials one way or the other. I'm just, I guess, trying to put it out ahead of time to say, this is something that I think as a group, we've been more sensitive about how these things wind up looking as the finished product. So if we're being asked to consider something that's going to be a little bit more visible by the nature of what we're approving today, I think it would be important for you guys to know that I feel like maybe we'd be a little bit more sensitive to what those materials are going to be when it comes through for the SIP.
Very valid.
Thank you for following me down this rabbit hole.
And Kathy's going to bring us
Appreciate-
up.
Yeah,
Kathy.
Kathy, thank you.
My concern is the size. 42 units. That's kind of a shock. Although we probably talked about it at the workshop. Do we have any other apartment buildings in Oshkosh that are that large?
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, evergreen.
Center City, it's not uncommon. On the west side.
There's
and-
plenty that are 42 or above.
Yeah.
Yeah,
42 or above.
there's plenty.
Units within the same building.
Yeah. River Place on the
trail.
river.
The stuff in the center city, they're that big. On the west
Okay.
side.
Oh, yeah, River Place, okay.
You have some of the stuff that Midwest has done along Witzel, I think is approaching, I think some of them are at 70.
It's in that ballpark.
So some of the larger ones on Witzel that Midwest have
Okay.
out there.
This is just a little taller, Kathy. That's why you're having that reaction. It's just a little bigger because the parking's integral to it and
Yeah,
it's not
that's-
underground.
Right.
I can tell you that we went out when we toured the place out in Holman, because that's where that's where these models are. It's sitting smack dab in a single-family neighborhood, adjacent to it. We had the same concerns that you're talking about, so that's why we wanted to go out there and tour and see how it felt in the neighborhood. And when we got out there, I mean, I think our concerns were lessened,
I can pull up those photos if you
and we can pull those up too. Correct.
We have photos from when we went out there, because that was one of our primary concerns, as well as what is the impact of this size of building on surrounding Now here, we don't have any single family directly adjacent to it. What we toured out in Holman had their residents right up about abutting it. Personal opinion, after visiting it, I didn't think it had near the impact in my mind I thought it would. I got a little bit more behind the idea once I was out there and physically saw it.
Okay.
Other technical questions? Go ahead.
How do you marry this with the single-family residential that is maybe not adjacent to it now, but is, in the long-range plans? We have the Casey Meadows subdivision going in and expanding further and further, and subdivision that's right across the street on 20th that just went up or is going up.
Down.
And now you're throwing this down smack dab in this single-family residential area, which is really the growth to the west area of Oshkosh for single-family houses.
So, taking a look at the site, my opinion after going out and visiting it, you do have a large natural area kind of dividing the single family to the north from this multifamily. I think in large that will mitigate it, along with the placement of the buildings on the site being significantly set back from that single family area. And then after seeing how it interacted with the single family area in Holman is really what lessened our concern with that. This large parcel to the east of the subject parcel is also zoned for multifamily development. So this is MR12 as well, so in all likelihood we will be seeing additional apartment development here at some time in the future. So to the immediate east, you do have multifamily residential. To the southwest, you have the existing multifamily use with the CBRFs. And then in our opinion, between this large kind of natural buffer area should really help mitigate the impact on single family residential. You do obviously then have, single family across the street here.
I think the other thing, this is something that we're not inexperienced with in the city. If you go up and you see the Midwest developments on Witzel and West Haven, this development pattern is not uncommon. Tom, you live near there. So it's
almost a progression. It's like you got two condominiums, you got single family, you got apartments, you got nice apartments.
I think that's part of one of our goals is to have a diversity of housing in all areas of the city. So I think this kind of hits some of those that we're trying to have as a community.
Mr. Mayor.
The only comment is, in time, landscaping will soften this too. Once trees mature, it's going to make this look a whole lot different. I look at like a West Haven. At one time, there was just houses. Now, almost a heavily wooded area, but it's been taken half the country. But the landscaping will soften.
Yeah, Midwest did an outstanding job with their
Very nice.
landscaping.
Any other technical questions? Okay, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this?
Hi, I'm attorney John Schuster from Caliber Law here in Oshkosh, and I'm here with Linda Carlson. Linda Carlson is the owner and operator of Brookview Assisted Living, the two assisted living facilities that you see on the front there and the two lots there. It's important to know that she owns and operates those centers, and they're licensed to handle residents with dementia and Alzheimer's, okay, as far as the use of those buildings go. Linda substantially opposes this because we view it as a substantial change in the nature of the neighborhood and the property, not only for her facility but also the adjacent properties. As was just noted here, the city's prior approval on this was for 26 single-family condo units. This is a substantial change. And the concerns that were brought up here about the size of the buildings and the look of them, I can't think of a more substantial change than what they're proposing here. Not only in appearance and look and fit, okay, but in just sheer volume of traffic that you were talking about now that's going to be going through these properties. Right now, as noted, she's hosting residents that have dementia and Alzheimer's and important things like that. And noise level and traffic level is an important consideration there. A lot of the questions that we have, and the reason why we're opposing the plan, is that if you even look at where the driveway is currently placed, for these very large units that are going to go in there, the setback that they have from their apartment buildings is much more significant than from the side of her second building there. Which we find ironic. I mean, if you're doing the math in cars alone, you're looking at about 252 cars, right? If I'm doing the math right on the parking units, right? Because it's 2 cars per unit.
That would be the parking code.
Okay. If we do the math on 26 single-family condos on the same thing, and you add in 2 parking spaces per unit, I mean, you're looking at 50 to 60 cars coming in and out. That is a substantial change with it all. And then there's also kind of the major safety issues, not only with the road being so close to Mrs. Carlson's assisted living facilities there, with the traffic going in and out. She also has concerns about use of the driveway and things like that. Even from the plan, it seems that access driveway could easily be moved over to the right if you're looking at the drawing that's up on the board. The other thing to drive home, again, this has been brought up, is that the developer's plan is not consistent or compatible at all with the architecture of the neighborhood. Again, this is a 45-foot structure, and even if you're saying it's maxing out the zone limitation, that seems a little ridiculous because her facilities, as you know, are 23 feet tall. The placement even of that 3rd building, which is, I guess, on the bottom left of the 3 buildings there, is very close to the backside of her building. And her biggest concerns with this change now you're going to have this towering building and this big tower kind of looming over her property and her residents that are currently there. We also have a whole list of other questions of what this would look like as far as the construction plan, the construction timeline, what order the buildings are going to be built, because we understood from the plan that there's not a guarantee that all 3 of those buildings are going to get built back there. In what order are they going to get placed? Because that affects both the construction flow and, again, we talked about the placement of the driveway being a substantial issue in relation to the use of this property.
Appreciate the opportunity to address all of you, and I wish I'd had more time to prepare, but I first learned of this perhaps a week ago. And, I don't know how many of you have visited this site, but the shared driveway where the road is proposed comes within probably a 1.5 car length of my residents' bedrooms. And as John pointed out, I chose that site for the quiet and the serenity and the beauty of it, and with thinking I was on solid ground because the city had approved it for the 2 assisted living, and 25 single-family condos were projected, which would have been compatible. I don't find the multifamily apartments compatible. It's like another whole community. It could generate up to 250 cars on that little road going past my building on a daily basis, day and night, which would be very disruptive to my residents with dementia and Alzheimer's. Someone pointed out that there's not very many home sites in the area right now, which I beg to differ. I'm a CBRF, but it is home. I'm licensed for 50 residents with dementia and Alzheimer's, and their families, as well as themselves, are very involved in the community. My concern would be for the noise levels and the different times of the day and night that people could be coming right close to the building with headlights, with whatever 250 cars of traffic can bring to an area. My concern would also be, if anyone has visited the site, it is so close that it would be difficult to imagine this volume of traffic, people not utilizing my driveway to turn around, whether it be the folks that live there or even construction vehicles as they're coming in and out of that road. I'm not sure how many of you know a great deal about dementia and Alzheimer's, but as I said, the site was chosen for that serenity, and it was pretty much promised to me by the developer that never would such a development go in. It would always be compatible with that population, and I think this will really impact my ability to do business. Families look for a place for people that's quiet and serene. And not that there's not going to be some noise if it was a smaller development, but just the sheer volume of this and the entrance where it's at. It just is not compatible. It's very upsetting to me. I wished I'd had more time to prepare. I have prepared some folders that I would appreciate it if each of you would have one and take a look at the information on dementia and how the environment and noise levels and light affect people, and some of the other information about the facility of what is promised to the families and how I conduct business. And this is a specialty community. There are CBRFs that have different populations, are licensed for many different kinds of populations. I am licensed with the state of Wisconsin specifically for dementia and Alzheimer's care. So it is a great concern, and I never, in my wildest dreams, I would have never chosen that site had I known something like this could happen. It just wasn't the person that owned it. It was never in the plans, and it was never something I even considered. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
got a couple
Kathy.
questions for you.
Yes.
Go ahead, Kath.
Is your facility secured
Yes, it is.
so that residents cannot get out
Correct.
without somebody opening the door for them?
Correct. It's a secured community. Mm-hmm.
Another question, who maintains that private road now?
Well, actually, it is just a dirt road. The driveway, the access from 20th, it's asphalt, and then it turns to the left into my parking lots. The road that continues back to where the condo sites are is all dirt, and it kind of goes into a little cul-de-sac area where all the fire hydrants are for
Oh,
the
okay.
single-family condos. So
But it's a private road from 20th to your building, correct?
it's a driveway.
Who owns that driveway?
Yeah, who owns it?
It's a shared driveway for myself and that property.
But what is it deeded to?
There's
Who-
probably an easement in there at some point.
It's
Show the
To
property
Wayne
line.
Waganke. He owns the property. Myself and Wayne.
So
That's probably
The driveway is
another
shared.
owner maintains it? This-
No, there
Your
is no.
driveway.
I've maintained the driveway. There is no road per se. It's a dirt trail type road.
Right,
I can
but
drive
mean,
my
up-
car.
Up through your,
Yeah, I
to
mean.
your
Yeah.
property.
Can I come up to the
Yeah, please do.
diagram?
If it would help us, then we absolutely want
Maybe
you up here.
you can see, well, this one's better. This one depicts really what it's like. Here's 20th Avenue. It says private road, but actually, as you come in off of 20th, it turns into my parking lot right here. And here's where it ends. There's no road.
Yeah.
It's just a dirt.
Dirt trail.
Trail that goes back onto the property. And it comes so close that my resident suites and bedrooms on this end, their windows are right here. You know, it's a very small green area between there and that suggested road. And my other concern, this building, my residents' gated secured patio areas are right here. This building will tower over my buildings, blocking the sunshine, the view, as well as with their balconies, you know, kind of, our privacy will be gone.
So that access point is on lot,
It's on the adjacent property.
yeah, so it's on lot 3470. And
Township.
who owns that lot?
That's,
part of the proposed development.
That's part of, okay.
Thomas, you had a question for the petitioner?
So Linda, I've been there a couple years ago, and I don't remember going outside, but there's no fencing around your buildings, correct?
Correct, just a
Uh,
gated
just the
patio area.
Mm-hmm. And so, as, I don't know if this group's aware, but I've always been very hesitant about straightaways because there's a need for speed. And so I'm concerned about the fact that the road would be so close. I share those concerns with Linda and her attorney, but I also am wondering, the safety is going to be there. The people who reside there
while there is a gated patio, they're not, they can go out, most of them can go outside if they want. There's very few people who have plans where they have to be locked in. If family comes to visit, they might walk around the buildings or in the parking lot or something just to get out. And I do have a very strong concern about that road being right next to that building to begin with. I see a T with the entrance to the development off to the right rather than straight for two reasons. One, to separate from the CBRFs, but secondly, to cut down on speed going in and out of that that complex. But I'm also seeing that maybe the developer needs to work with Linda and her business because it's not secure. And I would have tremendous safety issues, as good as Linda's staff is, if somebody makes a break. They're running and there's not that much space to catch up before something bad can happen. So I'm very concerned about that entryway as well.
Ed?
Same topic, I guess. I'm just curious if the private road as it's shown on this proposed site plan up here, is that part of like an easement agreement or a restrictive declaration of covenants or something like that that dictates the location of that road from the historical development? Or is this just kind of where they've shown it, I guess?
I'm not absolutely certain. I have the
I was
original.
assuming John might, if
Oh.
you looked at the easements or something.
Oh.
Not that.
Well, the original plan with the condos to the right of that driveway by the detention pond, or retention pond, would have been 3 condos. And now, without it being a condo development, those wouldn't be there. But originally, that's why, like I said, he might have had plans to put it elsewhere, but the condo development never developed. They lost interest.
No,
in it.
I was just more curious if the road location is being dictated by the terms of a prior agreement between the property owners based on some document that was signed or something like that, or if this was just and this may be a question
on the
for
utilities.
petitioner,
It's private.
if they've shown this location here for whatever.
He has an answer.
Yeah, I think Steve will touch it. There's utilities that have been run basically where that road is.
Yeah, that, without a great deal of analysis, but looking at this, and from what I recall, this looks like the original layout location where we have the sanitary sewer interceptor running underneath. It is where the grading and drainage plan that was set up for the entire site already put the culverts in to allow the roadway to be placed in this location.
So there's culverts already along where that private road.
Crossing underneath that private road to create,
So you're showing from those 2 wet detention areas.
Right.
correct.
The culvert's already
This
in.
pipe already exists underneath here defining where this crossing was. The road has actually already been.
Yeah, it's green.
You can see in the green on the GIS. We've pulled up.
But they can change that culvert if necessary. If they move the road over to the east a bit, they can put in a new culvert for that.
Correct, but if that is done, however, it'll impact our access to the utilities that are underneath there that we need the paved surface to be on to get access to those utilities.
You guys have any, ma'am, do you have any more to say before we let this guy take a crack at it? All right, come on, sir. Name and address?
I'm Andy Klemp. I'm from Grummer & Associates in Fond du Lac. We are the firm that came up with the conceptual plan that you're looking at. So we were involved with the original development back in 2008 when the CBRFs were constructed, as well as the condo plan. And Steve is correct as far as the roadway. That was set up. There is an easement underneath it, and you're correct as far as there were some condos originally planned to the east of the roadway. So that's why the road is where it's at right now. As far as that, changing, I can't really speak as far as the density of the buildings and things in that order. But I just want to let you know I'm here if there's, questions about the site. But I think they nailed it. It is a private road. there is a culvert pipe between the wet pond and the dry pond, and it's piped right now between those two. So,
Do we have any questions for him as long as he's up here? All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Come on up, sir.
I'm Chad Robertshaw. I live at 2150 Morningstar Lane, so I'm just to the south of this and slightly to the east, that new development there. I did a lot of research to plan where we were going to build our house, and I obviously wouldn't have picked the site if I knew I was going to go out my front door and be looking up at a 4-story, as far as Oshkosh is, kind of tower. That's not the standard, especially on the west side of 41. Two other concerns is, number one, you're not going to hide this with landscaping because it's 4 stories. You're not going to put trees or anything else in to cover that, or you potentially have 60 to 70 balconies, porches are going to be looking right in at us. And the other concern is, obviously, there's the school there and there's the YMCA, and that is already a drag strip that people are in a hurry to get to the YMCA. And if we're adding another 200 and some plus vehicle traffic, only one in and out on 20th Ave, you're just writing a child's death warrant on that. It's terrible out there as it is, and this volume of traffic with only one in and out of this new 3-building setting is just, it's really shouldn't even be feasible. It's scary, honestly. We looked at this and we, planned our house there knowing the existing could be potentially, 2-story apartments, condos, whatever, not a 4-story tower. And it's not even like it's 3 stories with underground parking like on Midwest is done on Whistle Ave for the retirement apartments there. This is, the parking is actually on grade, so you're putting 3 stories on top of a 12-foot potentially starting out with for parking. And just very disconcerting. And everything to the the north and east of there is already zoned for single-family residence. It just really doesn't fit that area at all.
Thank you, sir.
And I guess that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Come on up, sir.
My name is Brad Courtbine, Cornerstone Architects. I'm the one that's put together a lot of the designs. I've worked with the previous developer that they had an opportunity to take a look at the buildings. And those buildings are they've got the same style where we have the parking at grade. And that's done particularly in this location because of the wetlands and the drainage. And so we've brought those up so that we do protect the building, the people that are going to be living there. And the way that those have been designed is to be able to fit within the development areas where we are presenting these. Like you've seen and heard from in Holman area, that's right in the backyard of single-family developments. It also is in the backyard of a church. And all of those things are complemented actually by these buildings. They're a very nice building. They're quiet. They're enclosed. The benefit that we have by having the parking underneath the building is that we do keep the people and their vehicles enclosed, protected for both parties, the adjacent property owners and our tenants. And so we really do feel that this is a complement to the facility, to the local area, to the city of Oshkosh.
Do we have any questions for the gentleman? Kath?
Yes.
So you designed the entire site or just the building? One of my primary concerns is the roadway. And can you tell me how wide this private road in your area?
These private roads are set up, they haven't been sized exactly to this point. When we typically work with these, they're at least in the 24 to 26, so we've got good traffic flow both directions so that and then we've also got, the one thing that you don't see on here that we have had to start dealing with already is the additional surface parking. And we'll have that, just like you've seen in some of the renderings, that surface parking is by the buildings so that we're off of those driveways and those roadways So we've got at least 24 feet of traffic lane going both directions.
Okay, that's all I have right now.
Any other questions for the gentleman? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Come on up.
Mike Blunk. I'm the developer on Morningstar Lane. And I would rather be in favor of the condominiums. I think, we've made an investment in Oshkosh here, and all of the homes in that subdivision are 350 up. And I think the traffic situation would be a disaster. I'm pulling out of one little road. I think it would be all day, all night. That's just all I have to say about it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Okay, public comment is closed. Now back to the commission for discussion. Let's say we. Yes, Thomas, then Kathy.
I will likely be voting no because of the road access, and until I see an alternative, I'm not necessarily opposed to the development, but I am opposed to how people get there and the safety of the residents and the CBRF.
Thank you. Kathy?
I have to echo that concern. I don't like the fact that it's a private road and that every private road I can think of is narrow. And it's immediately adjacent to the CBRF, which concerns me greatly. And did you say, Tom, and the owner can't comment to this now, but that the patio on the back is...
It's fenced.
It's fenced.
But it's not a high fence, and it's a place for people to go outside, but people can go anywhere. There's only a few people that would be subject to a more restrictive plan, and that has to even go and be approved by people in the state. So not every resident would be subject to that more restrictive plan.
Okay. Yeah, I have serious concerns right now. So right now I can't support it either.
John?
I likely will be voting no as well. As I mentioned earlier, I don't think this development is in tune with what else is going on out here with the single-family residential development. Anyone who's ever tried to leave Traeger Middle School during the day, it's impossible. And I can't imagine what it would be like adding another 250 vehicles. Granted, it's the time of day and everything else, but there's already tremendous traffic issues out in that area. Traeger being one, the YMCA coming and going from that, and the add all these vehicles on a public access road, in a private access road, I'm sorry, is just not feasible, so I will not be voting for this development.
Thank you, sir. Other comments before we... Ed?
I think I was firmly pretty well in favor of this until sort of forced to consider the proximity of that road to that building. It's disconcertingly close given kind of what we're looking at. I hope to think that there's some way. Generally speaking, and maybe an unpopular opinion, I guess, but we just wrapped up a project in Holman last year. I'm very familiar with the one that they did there, and it's pretty seamless with that neighborhood. I don't think that when you see it on paper, you'd think that it would be, but I think that there are some things here that work in its favor, including that natural buffer and some other things that I have less of a concern about the density, less of a concern about the size of the units than I do the traffic and that single point of entry and the proximity to the building and the location that it's in. So I'd like to think that can be reworked. I generally don't like to vote no on things, frankly. Darren, I'm a positive guy, right? So,
well, and it fits the zoning.
I mean, really, it fits the zoning. I don't think it's in we're going to talk about the Plan Commissioner Handbook here, and what we're supposed to be determining at Plan Commission is whether or not this is in keeping with our comprehensive plan. I do not think that this is fighting with or is, you know, incohesive with our comprehensive plan. I think that housing study that we did a couple of years ago shows that we need to encourage various types of housing in various areas within the city. A diversity of housing is what the market demands, and this is a diverse bit of housing in this particular area. So I think all those things, you know, probably make me want to vote for this, but I don't know that I can get beyond that driveway and that location with that population right there.
Just one point of clarification on the driveway issue. The road was set
Yep.
when we approved it
So-
years ago. So that
Yep.
road, if.
But we approved it with condos, man. It's a
Correct.
different deal.
plan.
Right.
Different
Correct.
deal.
Still
Totally
traffic.
different deal. We
Still
got to throw
traffic.
the old plan out the window almost
So
entirely.
I agree with Ed. In terms of the utilities and the road being said, you have utilities in green space quite a bit. They can move the culvert. They can resize it for the drainage there between the two ponds. So there is some compromise, and I agree it's too close to those two units. And I think there's some compromise, and there's some engineering they can do to move that road over. So not against development. I am against where the road is placed, so I'm going to vote no.
Michael.
Ed stole a little bit of my thunder there, but
Sorry about
I'm
that.
with you. Again, unpopular opinion, but I look at this and I think within our mandate of what we're supposed to be doing, fits code, you know, diversity of density, I'm okay with it. Doesn't mean that, you know, the consideration of what type of business is there is not important, but I think that's more of a common council and specific implementation question, so I'll be voting yes.
All right, Kath?
I want to suggest that this might be an opportunity to lay over
Sure.
as opposed to defeating it.
Sure.
To see if there could be something worked out with the road, perhaps with the location of that first building, like right on this pond. And maybe I don't understand what the distance is between that proposed building and the CBRF, you know,
Yep.
aided fence. You know, maybe it's more distance there than I think. So I want to suggest that we might want to lay this over, if the petitioner is
Petitioner's here.
Can I make a motion to lay it over?
Yeah, I think you should.
Are you accepting motions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just, you know,
Yeah.
I will make a motion to lay this over. I don't know if we need a timeline or if
No,
you
just lay it over.
lay it over.
No.
Whatever you want.
We like dates, so.
What
give-
would
Whatever
you
you
like?
want, Darren.
so give-
Well, we want
Two
something
meetings?
rational.
Give us 2 meetings.
So 4 weeks.
2 meetings.
We're gonna,
Four
we're,
meetings.
we're gonna put it, we're gonna bring it back. If we have time
Yeah.
to meet, work with the petitioner in between that time, we'll figure it out. If we need more time, then we'll bring it back to Plan Commission and get it laid over again.
Okay, so it's been moved. For a second.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. We lay it over for 2 meetings. Any discussion on the motion?
We have to take
So
action.
is that, are we looking at March 18th?
2 meetings to be March 18th? Yeah, about a month.
Sorry.
Month. Any further discussion on the motion to lay it over? Yes.
You know I hate laying over, so.
Yeah.
Just lay that out there.
You know, you're, vote appropriately.
You can vote no if you want.
Okay, so let's call the roll on laying this over.
All right, Cummings?
Not here.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Ford?
Aye.
Kiefer?
Aye.
Harry?
Nay.
Mott?
Aye.
Prop?
Aye.
Bowen?
Aye.
Wojtek?
Aye.
Anyone? All right, motion to lay over carried, 6-1.
All right, thank you. Are there any other items of business before we adjourn?
I think it was 5-2.
We have a
You guys
move-
both
movement-
voted no on the layover.
Motion to adjourn?
No.
Or you voted yes. You voted yes. Okay.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. On to workshop.
Yeah.